So I slept in a little bit later than I normally do today because I finally can, because it's not super hot out, because I drove up into the mountains again. So it is 11:30. We're getting a very late start to our day. So let's get going. Good morning. So I drove up into the mountains again last night, just outside of LA. Look at these crazy views. Hopefully they're still good. It's a little bit foggy out, but if it wasn't so foggy, you'd be able to see the city right in between these mountains through that valley. I don't know if that's smog or fog or what that is, but it's super misty out. Views are still pretty good, and maybe that mist off in the distance will fade throughout the day, but either way, this is where we slept last night. Take you guys outside real quick. Also, I don't know why I got out of bed like that. I thought it would be a cool intro to the video, but anyways, looks like there's a storm coming in too. I can feel the cold air coming from it, but I guess we'll see. It doesn't say any rain in the forecast today, but I don't know. Yeah, so the van's right there. It's just kind of on this like dirt pullout thing. It's raised, so it looks like it was when they built the road and they obviously had to chop down this little hill to build the road to go through it. They kind of flattened off this little section of it for cars to pull up into, but there's trash everywhere from people who have stayed here. And if I had trash bags, I would pick some of it up. Maybe I will before I leave. But yeah, we're just like right on the side of this road right here. So this is, I forget the name of the road, but we're just on the side of it. So the pull-out entrance is over there, and then you pull up into this little dirt patch. Pretty spectacular views. It's not the most level spot ever. The van is like tilted forward a little bit, but I'm used to that by now. My back's probably gonna be messed up by the time I'm 80 from walking around and sleeping on such unlevel surfaces, but I'm here for a fun time, not a long time. The reason that I drove up to this spot, it's kind of in these mountains, a little bit higher elevation, is because it's cooler than down there in the valley. So honestly, I'm in no rush to get back down into the valley. I don't really have to be down there for a couple days. So I think I'm just gonna hang out up here for the day. So I always get the question, Ryan, how did you end up quitting your job to live in a van and travel the country full time? So for those of you that don't know, I used to work on the F-35 program in Arlington, Virginia for about 2 years. And then I got a job working for DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. And I worked there for about 6 months. And while I was working these jobs, I kind of always had a fantasy about tiny living in a van. I thought it would be super cool, but that's kind of all it really was, just a fantasy, because I had to go into the office every single day. So it didn't really make sense, and there was no way that I was gonna be able to live in my van while working a full-time job. So I just kind of ended up forgetting about it, and I got an apartment with a couple buddies in Arlington, Virginia. And then 4 or 5 months before my lease was up, the pandemic hit, sent everyone into working from home, including myself. And at first, pretty much everyone in the office thought it was gonna be some temporary thing where we would only work at home for a couple weeks and then we would go back and it would go back to normal. But then after about a month or so went by and it sounded like the pandemic was getting worse and there was no sign that we were going to be going back to the office anytime soon, that's when I started looking into van life as a serious possibility. And yes, the bacon is pre-cooked because it's easier, makes less grease, and tastes fine. So I think I'm going to set up my table outside to eat breakfast. Oh! I got this nice travel compact fold-up table that I don't use nearly enough, so today we're gonna give it some use. There we go, we got a table. Boom, boom, boom. A little bit of ketchup. Ooh, a lot of ketchup. Boom, there we go, breakfast sandwich. But anyways, where was I in the story? So once I kind of realized that there was no real end in sight and we weren't going back to the office anytime soon, I kind of came to the realization that this might be the only time in my entire life, since I'm going to be working an office job, that I'm going to have the freedom to live in a van like I'd always thought about doing. So after I had that realization, I sat there, I thought about it for a while, and I started doing serious research on how much it would cost, what type of vehicle, planning out my build, what I'd want in my build. And after about 2.5 to 3 months of that, I basically had the van built in my head and on paper. I had spreadsheets down to the bolt for exactly what it was going to cost. I knew exactly what my design was going to look like. If you go into the description of this video, you can see a 3D rendering that I made, and that was made right around this time in my van build process. So once I had built up the confidence that I was able to do it, and that I could potentially afford to do it with a lot of credit card debt, I decided that I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to let anything stop me. So I called a company up in Hooksett, New Hampshire, and bought a van sight unseen for $30,000. Flew up there a week later, picked it up, and drove it home. And I think the number one thing that kept me motivated to go through with it is one day I had a realization that I have an issue with picking something up, trying it out, and putting it down 2 seconds later and kind of giving up on it, and never truly following through with the things that I tell myself that I really want to do in life. And I just sat down and I told myself that this was going to be different, and I was going to finish this van build pretty much no matter what. And initially, the way that I justified the high cost to myself with building a pretty nice van build with high quality products in it was I planned on living in it for like 1 or 2 months, traveling the country, getting my fill, and then probably going back to the office and having to sell it. So that's why I built it out to be so nice, was because I kind of thought of it as an investment, and I was gonna hopefully sell it for more money down the road. Which thankfully obviously didn't happen because I'm still living in it a year and a half later. But yeah, that's another thing that helped me justify putting all this money into a van when I really didn't have it. I'm gonna be honest, I never know what to do when I'm parked in spots like this because the view is nice, but it honestly gets old after like 20 minutes of looking at it. And when I'm in spots like this, I'm kind of just sitting up here all by myself, so it gets pretty boring sometimes. But I always try to find a way to entertain myself. Definitely would be nice if I had some friends sometimes though. Really missing the homies. So, in terms of cost for building the van itself, since I had a kind of decently paying job working for the government, I was able to get a $15,000 credit card limit through Navy Federal. So with that $15,000 plus the roughly $7,000 that I had in the bank, I figured I have more than enough to build a high quality van. And I always had my government job and my paychecks to fall back on, so I knew that I was going to be financially okay. I might not have any spending money, but I was at least going to be able to cover the expenses of the van and the van build. So after I got the van, which in itself was not easy because I had basically no credit history and it was kind of difficult to convince any bank to give me any kind of loan for a vehicle. So I called 4 or 5 different banks and got rejected from all of them. And then I finally called Capital One, who approved me for a loan for the van, but their only stipulation was I had to put $5,000 down. So now that $7,000 that was in my bank dropped down to $2,000. But at least I had a van. So after I picked up the van and drove it home, I pretty much got to work straight away and didn't waste any time for the next 6 months building it out. So I was working a full-time job the entire time I was building out my van, and it took me about 6 months, and that was working pretty much every single day after work for 5 or 6 hours. So I would go to work, work my 9 to 5, and then I would come home and I would build out the van for another 6 hours. And then I would spend basically every single weekend for 6 months straight working on the van, not hanging out with my friends, not seeing my girlfriend. It injected a lot of stress in my life, and my social life was basically non-existent. And there were a couple times where I thought that I wasn't going to be able to do it and I was going to have to give up. But I'm really glad I didn't because it's been super amazing living in the van. It's been one of the best experiences I've ever had in my life. But yeah, those were some pretty tough times when I was building it out. And on top of all the social stress, it was just the stress of never having built anything in my entire life. The only thing I'd ever actually built in my life was I built a couch out of wood pallets for my dad in the backyard. But other than that, I had no building experience, no electrical experience, no plumbing experience. And I was kind of learning everything as I went. And so during that 6-month time, I started posting on TikTok. So I would post videos of the van build, the progress, what I was doing, and kind of just documenting the entire experience of what it's like to build a van online. And I kind of started to build a following. I think by the end of my van build, I had maybe 60,000 followers, and I had one video that went viral and got 3 million views, but by no means was I good at making videos or was comfortable talking in front of a camera. My videos were extremely crappy. But once I finished the van in August of 2021, I was still working my full-time job, but I wanted to start traveling. So I basically just went into my office and asked my boss, is it okay to start living in my van while working my job? And my boss was really cool about it. He was like, yeah, that's completely fine as long as it doesn't interfere with your work. So for the next 3 months after that, I traveled full time while living out of my van and was posting more and more TikToks, and I started building more and more of a following. And I started to think maybe I can turn this into a full-time gig because I started getting sponsorships and TikTok was paying out a little bit. And I was starting to make a good amount of money from just my TikTok. So then after traveling for that 3 months and posting TikToks and working my full-time job, I traveled from Maryland to California. I saw like 13 or 14 different national parks, and it was probably one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had in my entire life. I came back home and I parked the van in my parents' driveway for 6 months. And I spent the next 6 months trying to convince myself and build enough of a following to quit my job. And during that 6 months, I actually got a new job, as I said, working for DARPA, which paid even higher and was still working from home. So it made the decision to quit even harder because I just got a new job, I was making a decent amount of money, and I was finally comfortable in life. So coming to the decision to quit my job was definitely not an easy one, because I figured if I was giving my job half of my time and then working on my TikTok half of the time, I would just be average at both of them. Neither of them would be great. I wouldn't excel at my job, and I probably wouldn't build a big following on TikTok or be able to turn this into a full-time job. So after about 3 months of my new job, it was summertime again, and I started weighing my options. I could either give up on TikTok and pursue a career in the government, or I could give up on my career in the government and pursue a career posting content online. And ultimately, after a lot of hard thinking and taking everything into consideration, like my social life, my girlfriend, I ultimately decided to quit my job. I am legitimately so bad at this game. But yeah, quitting my job was one of the toughest decisions I ever had to make, because I essentially had to give up everything. I had to give up my social life. I had to give up hanging out with my girlfriend. I had to give up my job. I had to give up my family. And even to this day, it's still hard not being able to see my friends and my family. But I really wouldn't trade this experience for anything. And it's been one of the best decisions I've ever made, because I've experienced more in the last year and a half than I had in the last 25 years of my life combined. And I've built a really awesome online community of people who are interested in the same kind of things. And occasionally I'll get messages from people that say that I've inspired them to chase their dreams, whatever it may be, even if it's not living in a van, to just kind of get out there and start working towards it, because at the end of the day, the only thing standing between you and your goals is you. And I haven't achieved everything I wanted to in life, but I have achieved a lot. And this year has really taught me to just appreciate what I have, stop always focusing on the next goal or the next milestone or the next amount of followers that I can get. I really appreciate you. I wouldn't be able to post the content that I do or do what I do without you. So for anyone who's watching this video, I truly, truly appreciate you. But yeah, also a lot of people want to know how I financially support myself and supported myself while living on the road. And for the first few months of my van life journey, it was just my 9-to-5 job that I worked would pay all my bills. But then once I quit that, I had roughly another $8,000 saved up in the bank. And I figured I had enough of a cushion to at least support myself for the next 4 or 5 months living on the road if I got no brand deals and no money. And for the first few months after I quit my job, it was pretty tough. I wasn't really making a lot of money. I was making barely enough to make ends meet, and it was definitely a little bit more stressful. And I'm still not making a ton of money now, but it's definitely a little bit easier. I have a little bit more wiggle room and a little bit more cushion to do the things that I enjoy. So that's basically it. That's my entire van life story, how I ended up quitting my government job to live in the back of a van and travel full time. If you guys have any other questions about building a van or how I did this or what it's like to live in a van, I post a lot of content on YouTube, kind of going through my daily life. I post stuff on TikTok. And then I also have a Discord group. So if you have any one-off questions about expenses, living in a van, building a van, or anything like that, my Discord is linked in the description below, so you can join in there and ask me questions. I try to stay as active as I can in there and answer any questions that people may have. So yeah, I guess the message of this video is just get out there and do it. Stop convincing yourself that you're not good enough. Stop convincing yourself that you can't do it, because the entire world was created by people no smarter than you. You just have to break down those mental barriers. And once you do, you can pretty much do anything. But yeah, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. I'm just going to sit up here, kind of enjoy these views, enjoy the cooler weather from down in the valley, and I will catch you guys next time.